Joining us now is immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bhangal. Harjap, thank you for joining us. My first question.
Hi there.
Hi. Do you think legally these planes are ever going to take off?
They might do. A token one might take off with about 10, 20 people on it. However, that really isn't the solution. I mean, to deal with numbers of about 50,000 people crossing the channel, you need constant flights going in there, and you need the capacity in Rwanda, which they just haven't got. They've only got 300 places. And out of that, we have to take back 50 or so Rwandans into the UK. So it's an immense cost, you know, almost at about £250,000 per person for 300 people. Is that going to deter the rest of the 49,700 who are coming over? Let's wait and see. The answer is probably not, but, you know, this government seems to think the answer is yes.
As an immigration lawyer, do you think it's likely that we're going to see, as quote-unquote lefty lawyers getting involved to make sure that not a single plane actually ever takes off?
Well, people can challenge it individually, but the government has shown it doesn't really care what the law is. The law and the UK Supreme Court has said Rwanda is not safe, and the government needs to present evidence that it's safe. The government legislated over that to say, actually, if the government says it's safe, then it's safe. Almost like a trust me bro sort of scenario. So whereas the House of Lords, even until yesterday, was saying that we need an independent report to prove to us that Rwanda is safe because we're not convinced, the government said, don't worry, we've got this, you can trust us. And that seems to be the law. So whatever lawyers say, judges say, courts say, the government has superseded all of that and made its own rules.
Well, human rights groups have described this new legislation as inhumane and cruel. But when you hear the news that 5 migrants have died crossing the channel, surely it's more inhumane and cruel that we're not doing more to stop them coming across. We're not doing more to stop these gangs from exploiting people.
Well, the fact is, if you want to stop the gangs from exploiting people, then get the gangs. Surely that's the key. Rather than sending 300 people to Rwanda, isn't it better to catch 300 gangs and to imprison them for life? That would be a bigger deterrent. Now, the gangs don't care whether you send these people to Rwanda or not. And they know that out of 50,000, there's only 300 places. And with the odds, they'll take them odds and they'll take that money coming in. There's more money made in people smuggling than there is in drug smuggling. This is not a deterrent. People came over today, I believe, in huge numbers on the crossing. And if you really want to stop people crossing the channel, and if you had a real concern for it, then the French actually offered to make a processing centre for Britain on its soil in France. However, the UK denied it and said, we don't want it. So it's not a matter of humanity. This government doesn't care about the humans. Because if it did, it would have opened that processing centre in France. Italy have just opened a processing centre in its neighbouring country, Albania, which makes common sense. Now, why hasn't Britain done that with France? And why has Britain chosen its processing centre thousands of miles away in Rwanda, where it can't even keep an eye on people, and where we know that Rwanda has failed previously to keep asylum seekers there, because Israel done a similar deal with them in 2014. And when they went back 2 years later to see the asylum seekers, they'd all been re-trafficked back into Europe. So it's not about humanity, I'm afraid, for this government. It's about optics.
But Harjap, some people would argue that if we did open a processing centre in France, when an asylum seeker is rejected and told no, they'll still go and find a criminal gang to get them across, regardless in a small boat. Unless we say that anyone who is effectively said no to, instantly they are taken and processed and sent to Rwanda or returned to their home country.
Well, at least you'll then, if you process people abroad, you'd know who they are, you'd have their fingerprints, you'd have their DNA, you'd have their identities. You wouldn't have people here coming here without any of that. So that would be one huge advantage. You'd be able to, if people did get refused and then came over, you'd say, well, hold on, we know where you are. You've applied for asylum, you've been refused. We can fast track you out of the country and remove you again, as opposed to wait 2 years to make a decision on the claim. Remember, it isn't the asylum seeker's fault that it takes 2 years to make a decision and they have to be housed in hotels. They're not given permission to work. And so this is a system, this is a problem with the system and the government. The removal rate of this government has been on a downward spiral since 2010. This government was under the previous government, a Labour government, was sending back 60,000 people a year. Now, that isn't a problem. If 50,000 people are coming over and you're sending 60,000 back, isn't a problem. Enforced removals under the Conservatives a few years ago was in the 3,000 at most. And therefore, there is a huge problem with the removal system in this country and also deciding claims. And the fact is, you'll never stop everyone coming over, but by having a processing centre abroad, you will stop some people coming over, and the gangs model will be broken, because why would someone want to come to asylum and risk a boat journey and pay £5,000-6,000 to a gang smuggler to claim asylum when they can claim it for free while sitting in France?
Yeah. Harjap, one final question for you. This bill, is this just a gateway to us leaving the ECHR? Is that what you see happening next?
Oh, that's always been the way. I mean, I think I've always said from the past few years, what's first going to happen is we're going to blame the immigrants. We're going to then blame the judges and the lawyers. Then we're going to blame the ECHR. And then we're going to cut people's benefits and say, well, the British people should be taking jobs, so we don't need migration per se. And that is actually what's happening with the recent announcement by Rishi Sunak as well, and getting people back into jobs and cutting their benefits. They're going to try and leave the ECHR. However, the ECHR is what gives a lot of British people their sick pay, their employment law remedies, a lot of other stuff as well. This government, you know, Rishi Sunak is a bit loath to say he wants to leave the ECHR, but he has recently said, if I have to get these planes off and leave the ECHR, then I will do it. But I don't think he's got that much time. And I think this is just optics, trying to tell the potential voters what they want to hear. It's taken all of this time just to get a Rwanda deal and a flight off in place, which we still hasn't gone up. Leaving the ECHR is a whole different ballgame altogether. His own party and peers are opposed to this Rwanda process. One of his own ministers called it, I won't quote it, but something crazy. So there you go. That tells you the mindset of this government. And the fact is that it's not a good idea. I think the people will oppose it. And there you go. Their agenda is to scaremonger this government and to create panic and to tell people, look, that it's not us that are stopping it. It's the lawyers, it's the judges, it's the charities, it's the lifeguards. It's everyone else's fault except the government's. And you'll find that in anything, whether it's nurses, teachers, truck drivers, railway unions. The government likes to blame everyone else except itself, when really it's the system that's at fault.
Harjap, is it not just a little bit, for the fact that it's a Tory government? Because across in America, when Barack Obama was deporting illegal immigrants, he deported more illegal immigrants from the US than every other 20th century president combined. But no one was really criticising him. Donald Trump seems to have this reputation as the big president who's going to get rid of everyone, he's going to build a wall. But actually, it was Obama, and people were okay with it. What we're seeing here, the criticisms of our government, is it because it's a Tory government doing this?
I don't know exactly, because we seem to think, or this country seems to think, that Labour is a soft touch when it comes to immigration. If you look at the figures, Labour are sending more back than the Conservatives are. So that's really weird in that respect. Keir Starmer is saying the right things. He's saying, let's stop the gangs. What this government seems to think is that we can stop drug dealing by locking up all the drug users. We know that's not true. So how can you stop people smuggling by locking up all the asylum seekers? This government just doesn't seem to have a grip on anything. Whatever the Home Office touches, it destroys, whether it's policing, whether it's prisons, whether it's a passport backlogs, whether it's immigration. So maybe it is this government who just seems to think, we can talk the talk but not deliver, and make promises that it can't deliver on. It was supposed to cut net migration down ages. We heard this from David Cameron, then Theresa May, then Boris Johnson, then Liz Truss, and we're hearing the same thing from Rishi Sunak. What we've actually seen is it go the other way. That there were more visas granted last year than ever before. So I just don't understand this government. It just needs common sense, if anything, and that seems to be lacking in this government. Why can't we have a balanced approach, a mixed approach of processing centres in France and of quicker removals of people who shouldn't be here, quicker processing times, properly trained staff rather than ex-supermarket staff thrown in at the deep end, or gap year students in the Home Office. A mixture of all of this could alleviate the problems. A fast-track system reintroduced where asylum claims used to be decided in 15 days in this country, but not anymore. So a mixture of all of that, rather than just trying to blame everyone else other than the people in charge.
OK, Harjap Singh Bhangal, thank you very much for your time today.